Alright, so we're back in the shop and finally got this truck on the ground on all fours. And I think this is the first time I've seen this truck sitting on full wheels and tires with air in them on its own in probably 30 years maybe. It's as long as I can remember, it's been sitting on flat tires and in the woods and everything. So I haven't seen it sitting on the ground on its own weight and everything on a normal set of wheels and tires in a really long time. So I think it looks incredible. The wheel and tires were a bit of a challenge, but we finally got some measurements and looking for different wheels and tires on Summit and everything, trying to find something. So coincidentally, these front wheels and tires were off that red LY6 C10 I did, if you recall. And my buddy had gotten them to put on one of his other vehicles, and he had them in storage at his house. And when we did the spindles and everything on the front, if you recall, we had to change to the newer spindle, so we had to use the 73 to 87 spindle, and that put us to 5-on-5 on the front. The rear is the Ford 9 3/8 that has 31 spline axles, and it's 5-on-4.5 because it's the small Ford pattern. So we got 5-on-4.5 on the back, 5-on-5 on the front. Not how I wanted it, but that's where we're at. So he let me borrow these wheels to put on there to test fitment, and they fit very well. They're under, and actually, as I was saying, with the QA1 suspension, it stated in the instructions that if you ran the 15-inch wheels that you wouldn't be able to run this longer piece right here with this spacer below the steering rod, because it would help with the bump steer. So, and actually, because of the back spacing and everything on these wheels, I'll be able to run these. So I took it off on this side for test fitment, and then forgot about it on the other side, and it went right on. So I'll put that back on for this side, take it to my buddy and get it aligned and everything. But I didn't make any adjustments on the front, on the springs. The coil springs or the coilover springs are all the way at the bottom, and it's in the middle hole. The back, we ended up putting a 4-inch drop spring because it had a horrible rake. I mean, the fender was way above the tire, and I don't like slammed trucks. This is borderline. I'm happy with it. The front's gonna have to come up because we measured from the body line, and the front's about 2 inches lower. So I'm gonna raise the front up a little bit, maybe an inch or a little more, and just try to get it more leveled out with a slight rake. But I think these are 15x8 with a 4-inch back spacing and a 235/70/15 tire. On the back, we measured and measured and measured, and we had these wheels, which are the Weld Pro Stars, and the back spacing on these is 4 1/4, and then if you measure from the tire to the inner, it was 5 inches. So with these on there, the inside was actually hitting on the inside of the fender here and the wood and everything. So there was 13 inches total from the lip to the inside of the fender. So I wanted to put the biggest tire I could fit, and I wanted it as close to the outer fender as we could get it. So we knew this is our baseline. So instead of doing a 5-inch backspace, because then when you do the bulge of the tire, or account for the tire, I was worried it was going to be too far inboard and hit the bed of the fender. And I'm certainly not opposed to cutting the fenders and sectioning them and mini tubbing it, so to speak. But the shock, the way the shock is that's kind of, they're both about at the same place. So we went on there and checked wheels that had a 4-inch backspace, 10 inches wide, and with the 5-on 4.5 bolt pattern, and these showed up. And so my buddy was with me, and he said those wheels that were on my 86 look just like this. So he went up to Summit and grabbed these for me, and then I went to my buddies and grabbed those, and we put it on there with just the wheel. And I'm not gonna lie, initially looking at it with the measurements and everything, I did not think it was gonna fit and wasn't gonna work. But he had some 275/60s, which is 10.8 section width. So on a 10-inch wheel, it shouldn't have any bulge. So they ended up fitting perfect. I did turn the fender up a little bit, and I have plenty of room to stick my hand in between the tire and the fender, so they fit good. And then they stick out a little wider than the front, so the track width of the back is a little bit wider. So I was very happy that we were able to get that resolved yesterday. And so these tires are very, very old. I don't know, I haven't looked at the date code on them, but I know that they're very, very old. So my buddy works at a tire store, and he wouldn't drive on them when he got that 86 truck, so I know they're bad. So I'll be getting with him to get me some new front tires to go on here, so we don't worry about exploding a tire on this thing. As you can see, we got the engine in, transmission, drive shaft, everything's about hooked up. We got all the fluids in it. We got the steering shaft done right there. That was exciting. Ended up having to do it twice because I don't know why I thought I could do it without the engine and all in there. So the first time I built the steering shaft, it was all over here in the way. So as soon as I put the engine in, I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. Had to pull it all out, cut it all up, and start over. And so that's what I ended up with. I feel like I could have done a single shaft straight down, but for some reason QA1 wanted a middle, this middle steering joint. So whatever, it's on there, it works. I gotta finish welding it up and everything, and then we started on the wiring. We got our wiring diagrams, and we're looking over all the truck wiring last night, trying to figure out what everything is. So these are the wires that come from the truck that went to the engine. So I think this is like a sending unit, starter wire. I think this gives keyed 12 volts back into the truck, and then this is another sending unit wire. So but yeah, it's coming together pretty good. I've got, once I finalized the steering shaft, I put the alternator on, finished the serpentine setup, and then start wiring everything, get the holly where it's going to go. We got our O2 sensor in, we got our downpipe wrapped, and everything didn't fit. So it was one thing after another. The steering shaft was the first thing that didn't fit, didn't work, and then I was trying to work through that, and then come over here, and then my turbo log wouldn't fit, and I was devastated because that's the whole point of this truck is the turbo. And so then with the addition of the QA1 suspension, this piece right here that bolts to the frame and holds the coilover was actually hitting the turbo log. So I had to massage that down with a flap disc and was able to get it to fit, obviously. And that went on, and then it was just ran into a couple hiccups and everything. The fuel line on the back, the dipstick tube came into contact with how I had it run, so I had to redo that. So anyway, that was a couple things we ran into, but I was able to get it overcome and get this thing together. So now, like I say, we get the wiring done on it, and then we should be ready to fire this thing up. So the fuel system's done. I mean, everything's there. We're ready to go. And you know, I like to have them where when I get it running, it's ready to go drive, because you know the temptation's just too great. Because once you know it's running, you just want to go drive it. So anyway, we got the Dominator in there, and the dash, the digital dash, or however you call it. It's actually the obsolete, that dash. But here's I've had this wiring harness for the Holly for probably 10 or 11 years. So this harness has been through multiple iterations and changes, and I can't remember what all I've been through and done with this engine harness. So I think it's gonna go by the wayside, and I'm gonna go to Summit and buy a new engine harness and just start over fresh, because you know, in laying it out and looking over everything, it was just overwhelming with you know, cut wires. And like I say, I don't not remember how I left this harness. So instead of having to deal with it and go back through the wiring diagram for it and figure out what I did and what it needs and all that stuff, and I'm kind of in a time crunch too, so I'm just gonna go buy a new engine harness and a new injector harness. And well, actually this injector harness, this was wired. It has 16 injectors set up in it, so I had a dual fuel, ran a dual fuel setup with this harness before that was even a thing. I forget what software update they came out with that had the dual fuel set up. So, but anyway, like I say, I'm just gonna start over fresh and new with a new harness. And it is insane what they want for one of these harnesses. I think they're like $600 for the engine harness. It's incredible what Holly wants for all this stuff. And then most of the time there's a problem with them. But you know, there's the USB harness, and then the solenoids for the boost controller, and the main power harness, and all this stuff. Oh, and the CAN bus harness for the dash. So after church, I'm gonna go run up the Summit and get those harnesses and a couple other things I need. I'm off again tomorrow, so hopefully I can get the Dominator mounted, located and mounted. I got my battery yesterday measured and got that, so we're gonna put the battery box on the frame rail under the bed, start running all our power wires and everything, and then that'll help me figure out my keyed power and just what all the wires are, because I don't know what all these wires, well, all 5 of these wires do. You know, that's the beautiful thing about the 60s vehicles is this ran your whole engine in 1960. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wires that ran your whole engine in 1962. So we've got a lot more wires now and a lot more to do. So anyway, that's the update for now. Looks like we got less than 20 days for Daytona, so I'm hoping to get this thing running tomorrow. Fingers crossed. There's still a decent amount of things to do, but I feel a lot more comfortable at this point with it than I did the start of last week. So it's really nice to see it on wheels and tires. That was really an outlier. Trying to figure that out and get that situated. I'm thankful that's figured out. Now we got the engine and transmission in it. Everything's coming together, so hopefully we can pull it off and be able to get some miles on this thing and drive it around here. Maybe even get Michael to tune it before we go to Daytona. And then, like I say, if it's all together and running and driving, and I feel confident with it, then like I say, I'm gonna try to drive it to Daytona for the turkey rod run, and get to put some miles on it and enjoy it again. So that's the update for now.